Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Every day there are countless books and articles that are published offering the key on how to make your business a success. It's easy to feel overwhelmed trying to keep up and run your business. That's why Deb Creer created the Business Power Hour. Keep up on the latest trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. Let the Business Power Hour do the heavy work for you.
Good morning. Good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about giving professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And oh my gosh, this is one of those guests that I should have hit record when we first started because we had such a fun pre-conversation, but we'll still have lots left to talk about. So please join me in welcoming Kelly Meerbott to our program today. Welcome, Kelly. How are you?
I am so great. And I'm even better because I get to spend this morning with you.
Yay!
And you're right. We did have a great conversation. And I love those magical synchronicities, like where you open a camera and go, I've known you forever.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Sister from another mister,
yes,
right?
I love that.
I love it.
And,
I love it.
And I am so grateful for you letting me on your program. I'm just excited to talk to you and hopefully serve and support your audience with what I have to say.
Great. Well, let me tell people a little bit about you, and then we'll jump into this.
Yes, ma'am.
Kelly Meerbott is an acclaimed TEDx keynote speaker, author, podcast host, and award-winning certified leadership coach. With a unique trauma-informed approach and PTSD training, Kelly has transformed the leadership landscape for executives, C-suite members, and senior military officers. Thank you for that. Her proven strategies help 90% of her clients overcome burnout, become more resilient, and achieve their goals. Kelly's insight on burnout is featured in her best-selling book, From Burnout to Bliss, and her latest release, which we'll talk a lot about because it's so much fun, Meerbotts Fables. So again, Kelly, welcome.
Thank you so much. It's always surreal when somebody reads my bio because
I know
it kind of like it flashes back and you go, oh yeah, I did that. Holy cow. Because I'm one of those people, Deb, and I don't know if you're like this, where I'm like, I'm not doing enough. And then I hear my bio and I'm like, sister, you need to slow down.
I know. My business coach told me that yesterday. She's like, I know you go 900 miles an hour, but maybe you need to dial it back. But I think that is obviously a challenge, especially for women executives, right? Because we do think we've got to do it all.
Yes.
Well, speaking of your bio, though, tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are today, and then we'll really jump into the discussion.
Yeah, so I would say it started, believe it or not, between the ages of 1 and 4. My dad's a former professional golfer on the PGA Tour. He's not like a country club. He literally was traveling from tour stop to tour stop. And I'm going to date myself because this was late 70s, early 80s, right? It was not, the PGA Tour was not what it is today. There were no other kids. Right. So I was in the midst of adults like Arnold Palmer, Jack Nicklaus, Trevino, Gary Player, all the
names,
the kings of the tour. And if you know anything about golf, you got to be quiet, right? So what I remember is just all of this knowledge and these people who were really great and high up in their careers, whether it was an athlete or a swing coach or a health coach, to be able to have their knowledge permeate me as a child, really, I think, set the tone. And we were talking about how mind projects on body, right? Well, golf is very mental sport.
Right.
Right. So to be able to be present when, first of all, my dad was playing, but also to notice, and in retrospect, I have words for it. When I was 4, I didn't know what mindfulness was, but to understand that this one stroke is what you need to worry about, not putting on the green, really Interesting. So it started there. As I grew up, I was an athlete. Was I a good athlete? No. But I had a lot of great coaches.
Mm-hmm.
Fast forward, I spent 11 years in corporate radio
Mm-hmm.
for different companies. And I started out in promotions, marketing,
Mm-hmm.
and, PR,
Mm-hmm.
loosely PR.
Mm-hmm.
And then I transitioned over to sales. And I'll
Mm-hmm.
never forget the boss that hired me. He was like, "Why would you want to be in sales?" And I said, "Because all of your salespeople made money off of my promotions, and now it's my turn."
Mm-hmm.
So now, again, fast forward to January 20th, 2009, I was
Mm-hmm.
laid off from my corporate job, and
Mm-hmm.
it was a shock,
Mm-hmm.
even though it had, like, the layoffs had been covered on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. I
Mm-hmm.
was like, well, in 2008, I recovered all this lost money
Mm-hmm.
from angry clients.
Mm-hmm.
I have a really good way of taking difficult clients, which
Mm-hmm.
I always find that they're not difficult. It's
Mm-hmm.
just usually they're not seen, heard, or appreciated. So I did that with all of these angry clients who were McDonald's restaurants, BMW North America.
Just a little bit of money there.
Right. I raised their spending 300% after
Mm-hmm.
repairing relationships. And then I think I created $670,000 in new local revenue,
Wow.
which in Norfolk, Virginia,
That's a lot of money.
that's a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
So when the layoffs came down, Deb,
Mm-hmm.
I was like, yeah, it's not going to be me.
Right. You were their probably top producer.
Yeah, and the other reason I knew that, and again, I'm in the moment, I wasn't really aware of how good I was, and
Mm-hmm.
this is not it's just a fact
Right.
based on
Mm-hmm.
numbers. But anytime they brought in a new, less seasoned salesperson, they would shadow me.
Mm-hmm.
So I was
Mm-hmm.
inadvertently training as well. So when October of 2007, when that article came out in the Wall Street Journal,
Mm-hmm.
I literally wrote an email to my clients,
Mm-hmm.
like, pray for my colleagues. Like, this is so. Fast forward January 20th, 2009, I'm sitting at my desk and I get a tap on my shoulder by the gentleman that was replacing me, that I didn't know was replacing me, and happened to be a friend of my boss's at the
Ah.
time. I got walked into my boss's office, and he had a manila envelope with my name on it. And he said, "You have 10 days to review this with your attorney and sign it."
Yikes. I'm
Yes,
assuming it was a non-disclosure and things like that.
correct.
Mm-hmm.
And severance and the
Mm-hmm.
ability to claim unemployment.
Mm-hmm.
However, I couldn't sue them. I couldn't do anything.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Right. But the reason I was given was a made up reason,
Mm-hmm.
to be honest. It was that I didn't make my sales numbers.
And you're like, but I exceeded them.
Correct. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I know I'm not allowed to swear on this podcast,
Mm-hmm.
but
Darn, shoot.
yes. So this is the one time I swore at a boss, and I
Mm-hmm.
said, "That's BS," and
Mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
know it. And his response was, "You have 10 days to review this with your attorney."
Right.
And
He didn't care.
no. So I end up going back to my cubicle, and understand I wasn't laughing for 2 years after
Mm-hmm.
this happened.
Mm-hmm.
But at the 2 year mark, I actually wrote that boss a thank you note, because
Mm.
it launched me into what I
Right. Mm-hmm.
called, this is my vocation,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
coaching. And at the time, Deb, my husband was in Guantanamo Bay
Mm-hmm.
working with the 9/11 detainees. And
Wow.
finally, when he was
Mm-hmm.
able to call me,
Mm-hmm.
he said, I'll never forget it. He said, "Are you done?" And I said, "Done with what?" And
Yeah.
he said, "Done working for stupid bosses. I think you should start your own business." And
Mm-hmm.
I was like, okay, it's that easy. Well, luckily, Senator Mark Warner made Virginia very easy to start a
Mm-hmm.
small
Mm-hmm.
business. So I had $75 in my bank account while I was waiting for the severance and the
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
unemployment to kick in. And 40 went to my business license,
Mm-hmm.
35 went to gas up my car, and 4 months later, we had our first client, which is great. But when the idea of coaching came to me,
Mm-hmm.
from a coach that I had hired,
Mm.
I was resistant, completely resistant. And what I'm about to say to you, Deb, you're going to understand. Like, I had no context of coaching at that time.
Mm-hmm. Right. You
But
hadn't used one and
no, and
you were thinking coach like sports coach.
well, actually, I was thinking something different. I was
Ah,
thinking women in flowy dresses, barefoot with flower like wreaths on their heads.
okay. So
Kind of
yeah,
was
yeah.
right, right. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, that's not what I want.
Mm-hmm.
Well, my coach at the time, who I ended up working with for 3.5 years, said to me, what if you could change the corporate conversation just based on how you show up?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So she ended up nominating me for this coaching academy in Chicago, which unfortunately did not make it through the pandemic, to get trained in
Mm-hmm.
human and
Mm-hmm.
organizational transformation. And it was a 12-month, 175-hour or a course.
Mm-hmm.
And I did it, and it was great. And believe it or not, about 2 weeks after I finished that course, I got a call from somebody who's been a hero of mine since 2000. His name is Steve Chandler. He is, they call him the godfather of coaching.
Mm-hmm.
He has written, I think it's over 40
Mm-hmm.
best-selling books, coached 75 Fortune 100 companies. And he ends up calling me, and I will tell you what the way it worked, Deb, and you're going to love this. He called me, and first of all, like, my phone rang, and there was an Arizona area code on
Mm-hmm.
it. I don't know anybody,
Arizona. Yeah.
right? I was in
Mm-hmm.
Virginia at the
Mm-hmm.
time, and there was something inside of me, my inner wisdom, that
Mm-hmm.
was like, Kelly, pick up the phone. So I
Mm-hmm.
picked up the phone, and if you Google Steve Chandler, to hear his voice, like,
Mm-hmm.
it's very deep and
Mm-hmm.
distinct. So he's like, Kelly, this is Steve Chandler. And I
Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God.
how can I help you,
Mm-hmm.
Steve?
Mm-hmm.
So he was doing a 2-day invite only symposium for 40
Mm-hmm.
coaches worldwide
Mm-hmm.
in London, with Rich Litvin, and they
Mm-hmm.
wrote the book The Prosperous Coach
Mm-hmm.
in that weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And it was an honor to be there.
Mm-hmm.
It was an honor to learn from both of them.
Mm-hmm.
And then literally after that, which was, I think it was June 2010, is
Mm-hmm.
when that London trip happened. It's been like just, a rocket ship,
Mm-hmm.
um, and a roller coaster ride ever since then.
Mm-hmm.
And then when Brian retired from the Navy after 20 years,
Mm-hmm.
in 2013, we moved to Philadelphia,
Mm-hmm.
and I literally up leveled my
Mm-hmm.
business in a way I didn't expect, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
extremely grateful for.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's the story.
I
you know
love it. So you were
yeah
a coach before a lot of people even knew what coaches were.
yeah yeah and ironically, Deb, when I started my business January 20th, 2009, and my dad was like, you're gonna do what
Yeah.
is that
My
exactly?
my parents never understood what I do.
Oh, my dad tells people that I'm a psychologist. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
not a psychologist. He also tells people my husband's a Navy SEAL. He's not. I don't know
No.
if he got it.
He got the Navy part right, but
Got the Navy part right, and God bless him, but I'm not going to correct him because I've
mm-hmm.
been trying to do that for like 16 years, and he
Mm-hmm.
doesn't get it, but that's okay. But there were a lot of naysayers, a
Mm-hmm.
lot. I mean, and it came from friends and family,
Right.
honestly.
Well,
Um,
people did think it was woo woo.
yeah, and they didn't understand it. And what made me scratch my head is my parents specifically. My dad's an athlete.
Mm-hmm.
Even you should have some concept of coaching,
Right. And
from
you
that.
mentioned golfers have a lot of coaches.
Yeah,
Even though it is an individual sport, you've got your swing coach, there's just tons of coaches that
yeah,
Tiger Woods has coaches, and
yeah.
so he should have known what a business coach would be equating to.
Yeah. And I mean, it was funny because so my dad's 75. He lives
Hmm.
in South Florida, and I was with him in October. And he looked at my LinkedIn profile and he goes, wow, you did all that. I was like,
Yeah,
George,
Dad.
this is why you shouldn't have a flip phone, because there's a whole world out there, but he doesn't understand it, which is fine.
Right.
That's fine.
He's Dad. We love Dad anyway.
I
Hmm.
do love Dad anyway.
Hmm.
He's a character. Let's
Hmm.
just
Hmm.
so anyway, but yeah, I mean, I love coaching, and I
Hmm.
really focus on leadership, because
Hmm.
leadership applies to business. It
Hmm.
applies to your family,
Hmm.
your
Right.
goals.
Hmm.
It's you lead yourself from the
Hmm.
inside.
Hmm.
And I always say to my clients, I'm not here to tell you what to do, judge you,
Hmm.
or be like the drill sergeant on
Hmm.
jacket,
Hmm.
which always gets a laugh from the generals
Hmm.
and the senior leaders. But I'm
Hmm.
not. I'm here to walk alongside you and
Hmm.
share information
Hmm.
in the form of stories.
Hmm.
And if it resonates with you, take it, make it your
Hmm.
own. If not, then just leave it in the session.
Hmm.
And it's just to me, Deb, and I know you've probably had these moments with your coach, when there is it's almost like a game of Tetris. Like when you see the
Hmm.
last block like drop into place,
Right.
and all of a sudden it's,
It goes
oh,
boogity boogity boogity.
right,
Hmm.
right, right. Oh, I
Hmm.
love that. Yeah. When
Hmm.
it does that, you're
Hmm.
like, to me, um, it's such an honor to be a
Hmm.
witness to that.
Right. Hmm.
It just is, because it's
Hmm.
like a miracle unfolding in
Hmm.
front of
Hmm. Right. Well, and a coach is only bringing out the best of someone and working on the things that they need to work on. I mean, you're not recreating them. You're not, it's what, and maybe sports is the best way to think of that, because I played sports. I sat on the bench,
me.
because that was not my skill set.
Mhm.
And but and so it wouldn't have mattered what type of coach I had.
Right.
That was just not me. I mean, I
Right.
would walk and be dribbling down the court playing basketball and fall over the lines, right? You know, and so a coach wasn't going to improve that.
No.
And I think that's where people get a little confused about a coach, because a coach is just bringing out the best in you and working on the things that need to be improved. But sometimes you're still just going to fall over the lines on the floor, and you just got to deal with that.
Yeah. Well, and I always say there's a lot of learning in the struggle.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like when I work with helicopter parents, which there are some out there,
Oh,
um,
one or two. Mm-hmm.
one or two. And I always say, when your child began to walk, did you allow them to fall?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer is yes, of
Right.
course,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I always say
Did you
now,
want them to fall? No, because you didn't want them to get hurt, but you
right,
also knew they needed to fall.
100%. So that, I think that's my biggest challenge as a coach, is not telling people what to do,
Mm-hmm.
especially when you're figuratively driving towards a cliff, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, left, go.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Even though
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking in my mind,
Mm-hmm.
I need to allow them to crash,
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
again, there's two things. One, there's beauty in that struggle.
Mm-hmm.
There's learning in the quote
Mm-hmm.
unquote failure. Like I see failure as first attempt in learning.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But also the universe, God, whatever your belief system
Mm-hmm.
is. And I don't believe God is a being. I believe it's a state of
Mm-hmm.
being.
Mm-hmm.
Will put you in pain
Mm-hmm.
in a way you can't ignore
Mm-hmm.
to get you to change your behavior.
Right.
Um, so
That's
yeah,
why your body has pain.
yes, exactly. And I love that you brought that up, because my biggest thing is really getting these leaders, whether
Mm-hmm.
they're PhDs or
Mm-hmm.
small business owners from Harrisonburg, Virginia,
Mm-hmm.
to realize that there is valuable data in your body,
Mm-hmm.
in your emotions,
Mm-hmm.
in your energy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times, especially PhDs, they occupy this space,
Mm-hmm.
which we are not thinking beings that sometimes feel, we're feeling beings that sometimes think. And when
Mm-hmm.
you disregard the guidance systems that I
Mm-hmm.
just talked about, emotions, energy,
Mm-hmm.
body, you're
Mm-hmm.
missing valuable data.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I were to say to you, Deb, if you were to go into your mind's eye at a great moment in your life,
Mm-hmm.
what are the emotions and physical sensations that came up?
Mm-hmm.
If you can identify that and we can figure out how to recreate that state
Ah.
of
Mm-hmm.
being, and you occupy that space,
Mm-hmm.
you know what's in alignment with you and
Mm-hmm.
what's not.
Mm-hmm.
If it doesn't, honestly, if it doesn't feel good, don't do it.
Right.
Don't do it,
Mm-hmm.
because your body,
Mm-hmm.
your intuition, all
Mm-hmm.
of those things are telling you,
Mm-hmm.
don't do it.
Right. But
Um,
sometimes we have to do it to learn.
right.
It's kind of like the, hot stove, right? How many
Yep.
times do we still put our little hands out and go, ah, it was hot?
Yes. Yes. Correct. So, yes, there is valuable learning. And I try, like, to me, you said it, I'm not here to change you.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm here to do is turn up the volume on what's
Mm-hmm.
magnificent about you and point
Mm-hmm.
out the things that could be distracting from
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
magnificence. So, yeah.
Right. And I love all of this. And it's funny because I'm actually in training to be a cancer coach. And so, and it's a very new program, as you might imagine, and so it's been a lot of fun. But and we talk, it's all online, and there's a lot in there about we can't diagnose. We
Mm-hmm.
can't read test results. I mean, like, we could read them, but we can't then interpret them. And it's all about how are we going to guide them to make the best decisions for their life. And so, and a lot of times those decisions are not ones that we want to make, right? A lot of times those decisions are, we need to leave this relationship. We need to leave this job. All of those things. And I think that's where it does help to have a coach who kind of helps us see that it's okay to make that decision. And even though it could cause all sorts of angst and consternation and all sorts of things, in the long run, it's the better decision, but it still has to be made by that person.
Correct. It's about taking ownership of your life and your
Mm-hmm.
choices. I talk to my clients all the time about Abraham Maslow's locus of control.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, what that says, just for people who don't know,
Mm-hmm.
is that we can only control what we think, feel, say, and do.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. Everything else is, within
Mm-hmm.
this 5-foot
Mm-hmm.
radius
Right.
of us. Everything outside of that is none of
Mm-hmm.
our business.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of talked about that with a little
Mm-hmm.
spark that we both experienced on
Mm-hmm.
Facebook. It's, not everything needs to be commented on.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, I really, I love coaching. It's, like I said, it's my soul's calling. It's what I was put on this
Mm-hmm.
planet to do. And how do I know? I mean, I take interviews sometimes, just to experience what my clients are going through.
Mm-hmm.
And ironically, every time I take an interview,
Mm-hmm.
I come home or hang up and there's like 3 inquiries from new people
Mm-hmm.
wanting to work with me. So I'm
Right.
like, I got you. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
understand.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I never ask my clients to do anything I won't do
Mm-hmm.
myself. So everything I do gets beta tested first on me, to make sure it works. Like, if
Right.
I have somebody who pitches me, which I
Mm-hmm.
get pitched all the time, as I'm sure you do, I'll say, let me experience that assessment, that you're coaching, whatever, before, I bring it to my clients. And then it's beta tested by my clients. And, that's how I know these things work. And that's why I give a 90% success rate, because I'm very clear on who I take and who I don't. Right.
Yeah, because let's be honest, just as in sports, there are people who are not coachable for whatever reason. Most of the time, it's because they don't want it, right? Somebody told them or is paying for them. Maybe you're your company is paying for you to do this, and you're like, yeah, right, this is hoo-ha. And 99.9% of the time, it's not going to work. And so it's not even worth it. But yeah, and so you have to filter people out.
Yeah, Yeah, and I love that you're becoming a coach, and I can't wait to welcome you into the coaching world when you're done. One of the things I love is working with other coaches, because
Hmm.
I don't, the number one thing, Deb, and I'm sure you probably experienced this in your course, that somebody hiring a coach needs to look for is chemistry.
Hmm. Right.
I will tell you, in 16 years,
Hmm.
nobody from the United States military down to that small
Hmm.
family-owned business in Harrisonburg, Virginia, that was my client for 10 years. Not one of those people from hundreds of clients, thousands of
Hmm.
hours, have asked me what my certifications are.
Hmm. Hmm.
Not one. And I also know the difference between consulting and coaching,
Hmm.
or because consultants answer your questions, coaches
Hmm.
question your answers,
Right. Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And therapy,
Hmm.
right? And I work alongside a lot of great
Hmm.
therapists and
Hmm.
psychiatrists, and I have my own,
Hmm.
because again, I won't I won't recommend anything I'm
Hmm.
not to
Right.
do
Hmm.
myself,
Hmm.
right? And I also, in our vetting process, really ask those questions to kind
Hmm.
of filter out who needs a therapist and who
Right.
needs
Hmm.
me,
Hmm.
right? Because if you're coming to me and you have things that are like, I'll give you an example. I had a woman who came to me very early on in my career, I want to say like 2010,
Hmm.
and she had this horrific story where um, she was 6 and she was on the swing set. And I don't know if you ever did this. You ever like swing as a little kid and like jump off at the high point,
Of course. Hmm.
right? Well, her best friend did that, and
Hmm.
unfortunately, at the high point, the swing twisted, and the chains went around the little girl's neck and broke her neck. And
Yikes. Hmm.
this potential client witnessed that.
Hmm.
And
That's
then
as traumatic as it gets.
and her parents took her to therapy,
Hmm.
and the therapist took advantage of her.
Hmm.
Um, so when she came to me, she said, number one, I don't want a man.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
number two, I want a coach. And I was like, um, yeah, you don't need a coach. You need a
Right.
psychiatrist,
Right.
right? That's
Hmm.
way out of my
Hmm.
training.
Yeah.
And what I did was I vetted several female coaches in the area,
Hmm.
and gave them to her. And I
Hmm.
said, this one's mine. I have a therapist and psychiatrist,
Hmm.
because now they're unfortunately
Hmm.
separated. And she got very angry at me and
Hmm.
said some things that hurt. However, it validated and reinforced that I
Hmm.
had made
Right.
the
That
right
you were
decision.
making the right decision. Hmm.
Yeah, because if somebody is that upset, and plus, do I have trauma certifications? Yes.
Hmm.
Have I had PTSD? Yes.
Hmm.
But I am not capable of walking that woman through
Hmm.
those seated wounds that
Right.
came from age
And
6.
there was going to be multiple things there. And it's funny. I was just talking with my coach yesterday about this because we were talking about me becoming a coach, and she
Mhm.
said there's a very big difference between therapy and coaching. And she said therapy deals, and this was obviously very simplified,
Mhm.
but therapy deals with the past
Yes, wounds of
and
the past.
coaching deals with the future. And
Correct.
that's why a lot of times you actually need both, because you can't move forward till you've dealt with the past.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are two, and there are obviously people who are trained to provide both.
Correct.
But yeah, and that is something when somebody is looking for a coach or a therapist or whatever, they need to be clear on what it is they're looking for.
Correct. Yeah, and all of that is right. And tell your business coach hats off to her, because
She's
that right
good.
there,
She's really good.
I love that. I love that. I love great coaches,
Hmm.
and we also have a network of like around almost 70 coaches
Hmm.
worldwide.
Hmm.
Because one of the things that I noticed is that people will talk to Kelly Meerbott
Hmm.
because the lack of melanin and color in
Right.
her
Yeah.
skin.
You
And it,
you match with certain people for a variety of reasons.
right. And
Hmm.
and every single one of those coaches, from our coach Tagrid, who is in Egypt,
Hmm.
to Meg, who is in Spain now,
Hmm. Hmm.
to the indigenous
Hmm.
coaches that we have in
Hmm.
Canada.
Hmm.
I've sat with every single one
Hmm.
of them. And for us, it's an energetic fit because we want coaches that are part of the community. Well, since I've vetted all of those people, I know if a client comes to me and I'm like, yeah, you're not a fit for me.
Right.
I have all of those people I can deploy or tap to serve this person. Because for me, and I'm sure for you and your business coach, I try to set up things for the highest health, healing, and highest good.
Right.
You know, for the most benevolent outcome possible. Right. And if that's not me, if it's you, I'm going to connect to, because I don't believe in competition.
Right. Yeah. Because when it's the story of the boat, right? The tide rises everything.
Correct. You know, I believe in, going back to the boat analogy, you know, I want people in my boat that are going to pick up an oar and row and storm the seas, not poke holes on the side of the boat.
Right.
And you also have to decide who's going to be in your boat. There were people in my life who were not happy that I was successful, which is really unfortunate because I'm always a cheerleader for success. I want people to win. But at the same time, yeah, I mean, I think, you know, the whole reason I created the network, and I have a great partner, is because I wanted to use my white privilege, which I have, I'm very aware of it, to open doors and let people through that may not have been on the radar of an organization because of one reason or another. So the cohort really is representative of every kind of manifestation in life possible.
Right.
I'm constantly looking at it for whose voice are we not hearing, who needs to be included, et cetera, et cetera. And, you know, you and I were talking about DEIB before. And I know that's a hot button, but it shouldn't be, because if we're living in a global economy, let me drop the
right.
If you don't have a representation of the audience that you are trying to reach, innovation is lost, right? Psychological safety is lost.
Yeah.
You know, all
well,
of these.
And it makes common sense. You know, like if someone came to me and said, "Hey, we're going to hire you because I do have my own marketing firm. We're going to hire you to sell a product to African American men who are 20 years old." That would not be a good fit. You know? Now, are there basic marketing messages? Yes. But we don't, you know, it's all about the stories. It's all about connecting, all of those things that I would have zero knowledge of. But that would be where it would be good for me to say, I can't do it. And it's exactly what you said. Here's who I can suggest who could. You know, and then we make everybody happy, right? And I've done that before, where clients have come to me, or potential clients, and I have thought, no, not a good fit for whatever reason, you know, and you know, unless they were. Now I've had a couple that were like, no, wouldn't wish them on my enemies, right? And so I just politely declined. But for those that I think, okay, they've got a great whatever, you know, then I do try and refer them to someone else, because then they're happy because their needs were better met. Correct. The firm I refer them to is happy because, hey, they got a new client. I'm happy because I'm not doing something that wasn't a good fit.
Correct.
And they're all going to remember that when maybe they need to refer to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I yes, 100% to all of that, Deb, you know, because we don't see life as it is. We see it as we are. Right. So, you know, I'm not going to see the world as, I don't know, a non-binary Black.
Right. Yeah. It's just not in your, you can certainly talk to people about it. You can, you know, who are in that realm. So you can gain knowledge and all those, but in your heart, your soul, your head, whatever, you're still not going to be 100% there. You know, and I like the obviously, you know, DEI is in the news a lot with the big companies saying, hey, we're not going to actively pursue it. I mean, I have mixed emotions because I always think that the best candidate should get the job. You know, I grew up when we had quotas. And you know, and there were times where I would quit things because I would realize that I was only picked because I was the girl. You know, and things like that. But the key is that we have to give everybody the equal opportunity to be in that position. You know, and that's, I think, where we're still falling way short.
Oh
You know.
my gosh. You know, and I don't have mixed emotions. I think it is a huge mistake to not include DEI, DEIA, because accessibility is
right. Oh yeah. I interviewed somebody for the podcast yesterday who is blind. And so, you know, we were talking about accessibility, and her thing was, do you know how much money businesses are losing by not dealing with accessibility issues, even just on your website?
Yes. Yes. And actually that's an initiative we're working on this year, is to make it more accessible, because my why, the North Star that guides my work, is focus on creating belonging and connection. Right. So going back to your guest from yesterday, he or she is not wrong. You know, inclusion and diversity, equity, belonging, accessibility will put 30% directly to the bottom line.
Right. Well, and I mean, she, you know, what we talked about, and I need to introduce you. They, you know, like on if a blind person goes to a website and their text reader cannot properly read it because you made it pretty with lots of fun fonts and lots of pictures that you didn't describe and all of these various things, then they go to their competitor.
Yes.
Who might have an accessible website.
Correct. You know, and that's why we're working so hard on it. And I had somebody, I forget who it was a prospective client, who basically said to me, the testimonials on your pre-call video, you need to have those read out for people. And I was like, oh, thank you.
Yeah. I mean, and that comes back to exactly what we were saying, because we don't have direct experience and knowledge. We don't realize we needed to have it read. We needed to have the font bigger, all of those things. So that's why we need to make sure we're getting representation from as many as possible. Are we going to hit 100%? No. But we need to at least be making a big effort.
Correct. And I mean, the world is not just white people.
I know.
It's not, you know, I mean, we were talking about the Asian cultures before, and India is this rapidly growing country, you know, and I know people have mixed feelings about China, but they're part of our global community, right? You know, knowing those cultural competencies are going to help bottom line. Like, I know within Asian cultures, just from working with them, shame, blame, and obligation is drilled into them on
from like before
level.
birth.
It's millennia old. So am I going to shift and unpack that mindset in 9 months? Probably not, but I can give them tools to navigate it. And I'm grateful to all of my clients who invest in different ways. That have educated me. I mean, I learned as much from them as they do from me, which is such a great relationship, because it's truly give and take. So,
right. Yeah. Years ago, I taught at Metro State in Denver, and I taught a communications class, right? Kind of makes sense. And we were talking about cultures and how, you know, you need to communicate with them in different ways. Things like colors are different, and, you know, all sorts of things. And I remember this Asian student came up to me and he said, "Can I talk to the class about business meetings?" Sure. And you know, and I still remember, obviously I still remember this. And this was 20 years ago. If I hand you my business card, if we still even had them, right? If I hand you my business card, you might glance at it and toss it on the table, stick it in a pocket, do whatever. And in an Asian culture, that's horribly offensive. He said, you know, we should take the card, we read it, not glance at it, read it, hold it with both hands, and then put it in a place of honor. And he said, because that business card is an extension of them. And obviously I still remember that. And I mean, how simple is that? And then of course it carries over to everybody. Anybody hands you a business card, yeah, and I think there are actually still people with business cards, right?
I still have business
And
cards.
so you take it and you look at it and you read
Yes.
it, and then, now it might go in your pocket, but it's, it's not just I'm going to toss it on the table or crumple it up. And so, yeah, just simple things like that set the tone for the entire rest of what might be your, a year, many years worth of dealings with these, with that person.
Correct. I mean, that's, and I love that story about, and I still have business cards, probably, and it's taken me forever to get rid of them, but
because we bought like 20,000, right?
Correct. Well, actually 1,000, but still. And I will tell you, every time I give somebody my card, it's like they are very tactical and like, this is this card. And the feedback I've gotten is, I cleaned off my monitor and the only card left is yours. Because people like tape them around. Now, I will tell you, in alignment with what you're saying, this is where I keep my business card.
Right. It's a little container, but
people. Yeah, and it's right there. I always, look at it every day. But yeah, I mean, I also have a digital business card, but the disconnect is once you put it in your phone, it's like it's not top of mind.
Right. Yeah. If I see it sitting on my desk, taped to my monitor, whatever, you go, oh yeah, I need to remember I needed to call Kelly.
Yes. Correct. So, yeah, but like, the other thing to dovetail on, the cultural competencies, one of the things you also need to know about the Asian culture is they may say yes when they really mean no.
Right.
Because no doesn't exist in some cultures. You have to really understand the culture,
right.
Or take a cultural competency, class, which I have. To make sure that you navigate this global world, because this global economy isn't going anywhere. It's just gonna
and yeah, we are a huge global economy. And just dealing with people. Yesterday, I was interviewed by someone in Ukraine, and later on, I interviewed someone in Australia. And in between, there were 3 other states that I talked to people, and so especially with Zoom and Teams and all those things, it's a global economy. Now, you might have a brick and mortar store, but I always tell people, but you don't know who knows those people. Your contact in Ukraine might say, oh my gosh, I worked with so-and-so and they're in Atlanta and you need to talk to them.
Yeah, I mean, and there are even cultural competencies within this country. I mean, I told you before, we lived in Philadelphia. I lived in Norfolk,
and it doesn't get much more military than Norfolk.
Or south, believe it or not.
Right.
Which I was, growing up in South Florida, about an hour north of Miami, like I didn't understand
right.
The difference. And they call people Yankees. The reason why I made it there was because I don't have a New York accent.
Right. You weren't a Yankee.
Correct. And they didn't know that, I wasn't from the Midwest, because Southerners do like the Midwest, but are not fans of the North.
Right.
Which that's still a serious distinction.
Oh, yeah.
So,
we moved to Atlanta in 2012. And I immediately jumped in going to business networking things. And, so I go to my first big business networking event and I won the door prize. And I was like, oh, this is cool, and so I called my husband and I was telling him about this. And he said, what did you win? And I started laughing. Now, this is a business networking event and I won the door prize. I won a leather-bound Bible.
I knew you were going to say something like that.
Yes. And now, I thank them very much. I really wanted to say I have one, but, and so I'm like the Gideons, it's in my spare bedroom. Right. But, that was just, and nobody thought twice about that. And, but we all go to meetings where we have an invocation, all sorts of things. I mean, that is just kind of, something that we do. But yeah, but when you're at a business event and you win the big prize and it's a Bible, it was like, okay, I now
Yeah.
live in the Bible Belt,
Yes, you do.
and people don't really swear here, so I kind of had to watch that. And and the really funny thing, somebody listened to my podcast, and they said, "We love what you say, but darling, y'all need to slow down." And for like 3 years, I had a sign, a sticky note on my monitor that said, "Talk slower."
Yeah. Yeah. It's wild. And,
Right.
and,
Mm-hmm.
and, I will tell you, in my last job in corporate radio,
Mm-hmm.
there was a moment when I was on the phone with BMW North America,
Mm-hmm.
and there were some of my colleagues in the sales pit that were listening to Joel Osteen, who
Mm-hmm.
I personally really like.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it was so loud that the client went, "What, are y'all having a party there?" And I said, "No, some of my colleagues are listening to a radio show,
Mm-hmm.
whatever."
Mm-hmm.
And afterwards, I said, "Would you all?" Well, I said, "Would y'all?"
Y'all. Mm-hmm.
I still say y'all because it's more inclusive
Mm-hmm.
language. Um, and I was
And
saying,
you all doesn't sound right.
no, y'all is much better,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think. But these women looked at me and said, "You don't like Joel Osteen?" And I said, "No, that's not it. But my client
I just don't like loud Joel Osteen.
could overhear what you
Mm-hmm.
were saying." And
Mm-hmm.
they were like, "What, are you not a Christian?" And I said, "Actually, I'm a recovering Catholic."
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "And I really believe in a separation between religion,
Mm-hmm.
meaning organized
Mm-hmm.
religion,
Mm-hmm.
and business."
Mm-hmm.
And you would have thought that I told them to go out and
Right. Oh
gun
yeah.
somebody
Mm-hmm.
down and make,
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Mm-hmm.
and it really labeled
Right.
me
Right.
as somebody who was either a contrarian, whatever, you insert whatever
Mm-hmm.
word.
Mm-hmm.
But I do believe there needs to be a
Mm-hmm.
separation. I mean, the
Mm-hmm.
founding fathers of this
Mm-hmm.
country wanted
Mm-hmm.
separation between church and
Mm-hmm.
state. That's why we left England,
Right.
because
Yeah, because it merged. Yeah.
right. And I
Mm-hmm.
really believe there is a huge challenge with
Mm-hmm.
that right now,
Mm-hmm.
in our society, blurring that line.
Mm-hmm.
And we
Mm-hmm.
are a country of immigrants,
Mm-hmm.
period.
Mm-hmm. Right.
That, I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
just read a stat that I think in 2030,
Mm-hmm.
the largest population
Mm-hmm.
is going to be the Latinx
Mm-hmm.
community,
Mm-hmm.
which, I mean, come on, y'all.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about
Mm-hmm.
DEIB.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Again, you
Right.
better get
Mm-hmm.
on it,
Mm-hmm.
because
Right.
this country is no longer
Right.
just white.
Right. And obviously this comes back to how we are dealing with people in a business way. I learned very quickly when living here in the South, when I would go out, especially for lunch, when I would meet a business person for lunch, I learned really fast when the food came not to pick up my fork and stuff food in my face, because they're going to say grace. And so I honor them
Mm-hmm.
by pausing.
Mm-hmm. I love that.
And then I stuff the food in my face. But but yeah, it's just, to me, so many of the things that some people might go "Ew," at, we're showing respect for them.
Correct.
Am I going to say grace? No, but I'm going to respect that they do. And by sitting there quietly, and I might even say amen when they're done, right? If they've been saying grace out loud. But yeah, it's about showing respect for others. And then when we do that, they're going to say, "Hey, I want to spend my money with you,"
Correct.
or "I want to work for you," or all of those things.
Yeah, and it's interesting that we're on this thread, because the client I was talking about in Harrisonburg, Virginia, they were
Mm-hmm.
my longest clients. So
Mm-hmm.
10 years.
Mm-hmm.
They are
Mm-hmm.
evangelical Christians,
Mm-hmm.
and I would do the same thing when we'd
Mm-hmm.
have a meal together. I would
Right.
say, "Would you please say grace?"
Mm-hmm.
Because it's honoring
Mm-hmm.
what they have
Mm-hmm.
chosen in life.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm spiritual because I
Mm-hmm.
don't believe in organized
Mm-hmm.
religion. I think it is, growing up in the Catholic Church,
Mm-hmm.
and sure, I'm going to get a lot of flack for this, but there's a lot of hypocrisy in it. And I just cannot deal with that,
Mm-hmm.
right? I just need to be around people who are in alignment with
Mm-hmm.
their
Mm-hmm.
integrity.
Right.
And mistakes can be forgiven, cover-ups can't, but the way they've handled
the whole
sexual
priest.
assault
Yeah.
in the community, especially being a survivor, I couldn't be a part of that. And I tried many times. You know, my mom's Italian Catholic, my dad's Irish Catholic.
Oh my, that's as Catholic as they get.
Yeah, we had priests to dinner. My mom would always give things to the nuns. My grandmother had built a shrine to the Virgin Mother, like the whole thing. And I used to read in mass, and I would give out the Eucharist and the whole thing. But when you not only lie about something and then cover it up, to me, how can I trust you with my spiritual
with other things? Yes.
So I left, but you know, I am very curious about the five major religions, and what I have found is they all point that way,
right?
You know, and it's so interesting the similarities between all of them.
Well, and they all say things like serve others. You know, there are, as much as people might go, oh, we don't like, there are similarities in all of them, as you said. You know, and even just, you know, the various religions here in the United States, it is serve others. You know, I keep coming back to that because, you know, here I am in Atlanta, and we just, you know, last week buried Jimmy Carter, as we are recording this. And of course, that was the key part of his life, was how do you serve others? Now, was he, you know, beloved by everybody? Not everybody, for a variety of reasons, but still serving others was the primary part of his life. And for him, that came from his faith. For others, maybe you were taught that as 4 or 5 years old, you know, whatever. But yeah, it is a foundation of many religions.
Yeah, it is. You know, and I'm sure this is a very simplified way of talking about it, but you know, I have a lot of friends that are in the Muslim community, and when they explained to me that Ramadan, the fasting was to make sure that you relate to people who don't have any food, I was like, oh, wow, that's amazing. That is amazing. And I do love the practice of that. And I love the practice in Judaism of, you know, I've been to Passover dinners, which is fantastic. And I actually learned that the staff that Moses carried was the burning bush. And that's how I was
like, again, they all intertwine.
Right. But what was so funny was when I learned that, I was like, I apologize, I'm a recovering Catholic. We get the Cliff Notes version of the Bible. So I don't know, like I can say I know this verse, but I can't tell you it's Matthew 2:7, whatever. I admire the people that can, because they've already studied it, but not one.
Right. You know, and it's funny. Did we go down a rabbit hole.
I know.
But it is very important from, as I said, from a business perspective, you know, because you need to honor what someone else is. Now, can you decide that's not what you want to do? Yes. Years ago, I was doing a LinkedIn training for a group of students from the Middle East. And, you know, and this one young girl, now these were honor students. They were here as part of you know, these were really, really smart kids. And this one young girl, her LinkedIn picture, she had a t-shirt on. Now I'm big on your LinkedIn, you need to, you know, not wear what you would not normally wear, you know, and so she was going to wear a t-shirt. Okay, that's fine. But her shirt said proud Muslim. And so, you know, and this was, you know, 2000-ish, right? And I told her, you know, and I didn't call her out in front of class. I'd never do that. But I was talking to her later, and I said, you understand that there will be people who, just because they see your LinkedIn picture, will say they don't want to work with you. And she said, that's okay. I wouldn't want to work with them anyway. You know, and so that's where we, you know, it comes down to knowing these things, and you know, it is part of it. Sometimes it is just as simple as knowing who your target audience is for your product. You know, and so, you know, but you know, recognizing all of these different things that are out there really is what makes the great leader. And it's not a boss, right? Usually it's a different person.
Correct. Correct. And, all of these factors that we're talking about not only contribute to the bottom line, but they also contribute to a psychologically safe workspace, right?
Right.
You want to create an environment where people feel safe to speak up, to take risks, to share ideas without fear of judgment or retaliation or even humiliation. I mean, I will tell you, and I say this to leaders all the time, if you expect to lead long term, Gen Alpha, Gen Z, and millennials, this is a demand, not a nice to have. It's in their minds, it's the foundation of innovation, trust, and high performance. And there's so much data out there to show that. And like I said to you before we even turned on record, I'm not of somebody who wants to change your beliefs, but please don't try to encroach on mine. Like I had a gentleman who called me who was on my website, and he's like, you were referred to me. I looked at your website. I'm really impressed, but I have one question for you, Kelly. And I said, what's that? And he said, are you spiritual? And I said, yes. I don't subscribe to organized religion because I think it's very corrupt and it's been corrupted over time. And he said, well, I'm agnostic or atheist. I can't remember. And I said, well, that's great. I want you to be this non-believer you can be. And he didn't end up hiring me, but my point is I'm not here to change you or force my beliefs.
Right.
So I'm here to guide and walk alongside you. And if we run into a fire, I'm going to say, Deb, grab my arm. Let's walk through together. And I'll show you how you're fireproof.
Right.
So,
well, oh my gosh, Kelly, the hour is up. I always ask my guests for things they want to discuss. We didn't cover a single one, which all that means is we just have to have you on again. Because I really wanted to talk about women on women warfare because, oh my,
yes,
I think that's a big issue. I worked for a nonprofit for a while, and this is a long time ago. You would go back to your office, and now nonprofits, they're pretty predominantly women for a variety of reasons. You'd go back to your office and find the box of Meow Mix because somebody thought you were particularly catty that day.
Yes. Yeah.
This is a hostile work environment. Yes. But yeah, so we definitely have to have you on again.
I would love that.
Yeah. But for the people who are saying now, I need to know more about you and what are the services that you offer. Tell us how they find you and what are the services that you offer.
Yes. So you can find me on any social media channels. We're on everything from Instagram to LinkedIn to TikTok until
Sunday.
Yeah. Or go on my website and it's Kelly Meerbott, KELLYMEERBOTT.com. I am the one who answers all those inquiries that come through the website. So you will hear from me within 24 hours. The services we provide are executive coaching, speaking, whether it's motivational or workshops or facilitation, team building, organizational change and development. And if you're a large organization, we have 65 coaches worldwide that we can bring in to help your organization from anything from image styling to media training to executive coaching. So yeah, there's all of that. And then of course, Meerbotts Fables and the journal From Burnout to Bliss is all on there as well. And we have a lot of downloadables that you can purchase to kind of experience the work without, committing.
Right. Lots of great resources.
Yeah.
And like I said, we didn't even cover Meerbotts Fables. That is a fascinating book. It's a great thing. I'll have a link to it in our show notes. But yeah, we definitely will have you on again because this is a very important topic. And we didn't, like I said, we just barely scratched the surface because we went, ooh, squirrel. But it was a good squirrel. This was an example of we had a great conversation. So this has been fantastic.
Yeah. And I would say just briefly to the women on women warfare, that is a function of the patriarchy.
Mhm.
They want to pit us against each other.
Oh, yeah.
We are distracted from the bad behavior that is happening.
Mhm.
And also, there is enough for all of us.
Mhm.
There is enough for all
Mhm.
of us. So give a hand up to those coming behind you,
Mhm.
because that's a great legacy to
Mhm.
leave.
I love it. Well, do you have, like I said, we will have you on again, but do you have any final thoughts that you want to leave everyone with until then?
I would say, first of all, thank you for being here. And also, coaches are here to help you. If you want to get to your goal faster than 10 years, hire a coach. You know, there's data to say that people without a coach, it takes 10 years to achieve your goals. And with a coach, it's much, much faster than that.
I love it. I love it. Well, oh my gosh, this has been so much fun. I
Me
am
too.
Deb Creer. I've been having a great conversation with Kelly Meerbott. And until next time, everyone have a great day.
Tune in for our next program for even more trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. The Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer, is proud to be part of the C-Suite Network.